First Sergeant Kep here with Company D, 2nd United States Sharpshooters, and today I want to talk about one of the most commonly asked questions we get. How did someone qualify to be a Berdan sharpshooter? This can sometimes be a little tricky to kind of explain in writing or quickly at an event, so I wanted to walk you through the documentation as well as give you a couple of real-world examples so we can kind of see firsthand how what the shooting requirements were, the range requirements, as well as how the shots were measured back then. It's a little bit different than modern shooting practices, and I think once you kind of get to see the documentation and an example, it'll make perfect sense to you. So let's get right into the documentation. Digging into the documentation, there are a couple key similarities that I really want to make sure everyone focuses on, because the way it's written in some of these books, it can be a little confusing, sometimes a little contradictory. A good source of consistent documentation for the trials can be found on the recruiting posters of the various companies in both regiments. For this example, I just grabbed a couple classic books off my bookshelf. This one you've seen us use before, U.S. Sharpshooters, Berdan's Civil War Elite, as well as Sharpshooter by Wiley Sword, another classic. So let's go ahead and dive into some of the documentation that we have here. So Berdan believed his initial marksmanship test would include at 200 yards to put 10 consecutive shots in a target. The average distance not to exceed 5 inches from the center of the bullseye. Or in other words, the string measurement of the shots could not exceed 50 inches. At the trials, each man was free to use any rifle with telescopic or target globe sights while firing at 200 yards. The shooter could stand at 100 yards if he fired a gun with open sights. He could fire at rest, supporting his rifle on any object he chose, as long as the butt was in contact with the shooter's shoulder. So there's that one. And let's go ahead and see what Wiley Sword had to say. So according to a publication in the Minnesota Central Republican of December 11th, 1861, this Berdan sharpshooter recruiting ad posted that all able-bodied men used to the rifle or having a good eye and nerve who desire to join this branch of the Army will be examined at St. Paul, or all able-bodied men who bring a certificate from a justice of the peace or any other county official that they have made a string of 50 inches in 10 consecutive shots at 200 yards with globe or telescopic sights from a rest will be mustered into the pay and service of the U.S. and furnished subsistence and comfortable quarters at the Snelling House, St. Paul, as soon as they present themselves. Will use Sharp's improved breech-loading rifle. So, at rest, standing 100 yards, 200 yards, the most common similarity between all of these examples is your shot string. Now, for those of you familiar with sharpshooter reenacting or Berdan sharpshooter history, we all know about this string, but what is it? Well, let me show you. We have a couple target examples for our demonstration of how to use the 10-shot string. It's just a piece of string, 50 inches. I tied a knot on each end to help me hold on to it a little bit better. So in some of the documentation, you're going to see that the shots are measured from the center of the bullseye. In some, I have seen them refer to measuring from the first shot. So I have an example set up illustrating both examples. I have these little orange dots to help you see it a little bit better, but they're roughly the size of an actual Sharps round. You can see a little flyer over here on this target stand. So we have a bullseye right here. I'm going to grab my string on one end and then hold that in the center of the target, measure to my first shot. And I'm going to grab that string, I'm going to move it up, put it back in the bullseye, go to the next shot, pull it up, next shot. I'm going to do that for all 10 shots. And you can see that if you're doing a trial, you can find your qualifying shooters rather quickly with this method. And so you can see With this bottom target, we have this much string left over, so this shooter qualifies to join the ranks of the sharpshooters. So up here, we'll just arbitrarily call that shot the first one, and we'll take it from there. 1, 2, 3, we're getting out to the flyers here. And we're out of string. So the second target did not qualify the shooter to join. This is still a pretty incredible feat. Sport shooting was still fairly new in the United States, and they missed out on a lot of the sort of modern shooting science that we take for granted today. Variances in powder and consistency in bullet weight and bullet molds and the production and weather conditions. There was a massive amount of skill that went into lobbing these projectiles in a competition setting. And this whole sort of trial thing was new to the American military. So we have our qualifier, but it didn't end there. Berdan sharpshooters were the only unit in the Civil War allowed time to target practice, often having target ranges set up in their camps. And in order to stay in their top form and to have a little bit of fun, sharpshooters would often target practice. And many times, those target competitions, whose prizes could reach as high as $150 or more, are documented. So you can actually look up the various regiments and see not only the companies that competed, but also the target size, the distance that the shots were taken, and the final grouping. Some of them are incredibly impressive. There's one here between Vermonter A.I. Brown from Company F, and on Thanksgiving Day, he barely won a competition with a 2-shot string. So they had, a string, and it was 4.5 inches. So from center of the bullet to the next bullet was 4.5 inches at 220 yards. Berdan's own shots were 5 9/16 firing offhand. This is some impressive stuff. But you can see, like in Wiley's Swords, they have a little chart here of more documented examples of actual Berdan sharpshooter competition and what the actual soldiers were capable of during the war. So I hope this short episode helps you to understand how soldiers were able to qualify and to understand some of the terminology that's commonly associated with becoming a Berdan sharpshooter. Let us know if you have any questions down below. Thanks as always for liking and subscribing and sharing up this video, and we'll see you next time.